Hi, it's Jeff Chalmers here from discoverdouble-bass.com, which is the home of online learning for double bass players with our courses, our lessons, and we have an incredible series of interviews featuring some of the bass world's most exciting artists. And today's guest is somebody who has a truly international career, having lived and worked, well, across the globe, and we're going to find out more about that later, but they have performed with artists such as John Abercrombie, Shai Maestro, Gwilym Simcock, Kenny Wheeler, well, many more that we will get to. So it gives me great pleasure to welcome to Discover Double Bass. It is Phil Donkin. Phil, welcome. It's great to have you with me today.
Thanks, Jeff. Great to be here.
Well, yeah, it's fantastic because you are actually based in Germany now. Is that right? But you've managed, our schedules have managed to line up, and we've caught you whilst you're in the UK. I mean, maybe you could just introduce us and let us know a bit about yourself and how your work life is looking.
Yeah, so I live in Berlin. I've been there for 10 years, and before that I was in New York for a bit, and before that I was in London for 10 years. And I just work on tour basically, kind of as a hired gun. Who
are some of the bands that you're playing with kind of currently? I mean, I've given a few of the many big names that you've played with, but who are some of the people that you've been working with in the last year or so, or that you maybe regularly collaborate with?
Well, just finished quite a long run of touring. Some of that was with Jonathan Kreisberg.
Wow, wonderful guitar player.
Yeah, that was fun. And also with a tenor player from New York called Noah Preminger. That was really fun. And then another band with somebody I actually work with more frequently, a guy called Bastian Stein, who's a trumpet player from Cologne. And we've known each other a long time and have recorded many albums together and kind of created music together. So that's, a bit different because, as I said, we created things together, so that music is a bit more experimental and has the license to, we sort of trust each other to go down dark paths together, musically speaking. Whereas the other stuff is more kind of just hired to show up and deliver. So it's a mixture of some of those things.
Are you spending time doing other things as well? I know that you're a composer, that you're a band leader, and you've released 6 recordings now, I believe. And we'll talk about those later because it's quite interesting the way that it's come about. But what else are you doing away from the performing? Is there any teaching? Is that part of your world?
I teach at the Jazz Institute Berlin. I teach there 1 day a week. I have about 9 students.
Cool.
So when I'm in town, I try to do that regularly.
Well, let's take it right back. So you started out, I believe, like myself and many other people, as an electric bass player. Is that correct? Is that your first experience?
Yeah.
And what drew you to the bass guitar, or who were the players that lit the fire for you in that field?
I started playing when I was 12, and I'm the youngest of 5 kids. So my 2 older brothers both played guitar, and my 2 sisters sing, and my mom played piano. So it was a very musical house. And there was just always music being played and all kinds of different music. So my brothers were into stuff that was popular then in mid 80s. So kind of punk and new romantic stuff. And then my sisters were into, other stuff,
Yeah.
And my parents were into the Beatles. And so it was just a big mixture of stuff. And I didn't know anything about which genre or period it was all from. It was all just music. So I guess, there was just always music going on. And then I was always fascinated with the guitar as an object. So, because my brothers had one around and I was kind of not allowed to touch it. So it was like forbidden fruit. So that began this fascination with that as an object. But they both played acoustic guitar, and I got really into the electric guitar as an object, to look at. And I would look at the Argos catalogue. Do you remember that?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
There was a page that had an electric guitar on it, and I would just drool over that page. And I would look at Top of the Pops and always focusing on a guitar. Anyway, the first time I saw an electric guitar for real was at a friend's house after school one day, and it was actually a bass. And so I was when I got close to it, I was there's something a bit different about that. What's going on? And I was oh, that's a bass guitar. And I was what's that then? And anyway, so I sort of figured out what that was. And then on Top of the Pops, I'd look and see that all the bands had indeed some strange looking guitar with 4 strings on it. And that just increased the fascination. And then the other fascination was that I couldn't hear it. I could never hear it. So through TV speakers, it was just all you could hear was, drums and vocals and guitar.
Yeah.
So just the fact I couldn't hear it added this mystery to it. And then one day I saw the Blues Brothers film.
Oh,
And so I was 12, and not only could I hear it really clearly, but I could see it really clearly close up, and you could see the fingers moving and the strings
Donald
moving.
Duck Dunn in that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Donald Duck Dunn. And yeah, and that was just like, all right, that's it now. That's all the information I need now. I just want to play bass. So
you're practicing away on electric, learning that, developing your skills. How does the upright come into your world? Because I know that you are, I mean, you're known as an upright player now. Is that fair to say? Do you still play electric? Or am
I still play electric kind of at home.
Yeah.
I don't really do it professionally that much, but occasionally I get asked to do things.
How did this knock the bass guitar off its perch then? What was it that, really pushed you in this direction and made you pursue such a complicated and difficult instrument?
Well, it's kind of a long story. I think, to summarize, I just really got into jazz, basically, when I was sort of 15. After I'd been playing for a few years, and really just got interested in different kinds of music and wanted to keep learning. And eventually sort of found my way to jazz. And then I moved to London when I was 17 as an electric player. And then I started the Guildhall when I was 18, which is the School of Music. I was still only playing electric, but at some point people were like, look, you need experience, and if you want to play with people, you should really play the upright. So very reluctantly kind of sort of started trying to play it.
So who were some of the first players that you really got excited about? I mean, I'm guessing if you were getting into jazz when you were 15, you were probably going, all those gateway drug albums like Kind of Blue and Paul Chambers and maybe some Ray Brown. I don't know. Who were the players that you were really kind of like, oh, actually, this is worth going forward with?
Yeah. Well, so initially it would have been like Weather Report and a lot of fusion stuff, because of the electric.
Of course.
But through that, there was a bit of crossover into Miles Davis, and I would read about stuff, and with Miles, then I'd read names like John Coltrane, Charlie Parker,
Joe Zawinul,
and then it's like kind of 4 records. It's a coincidence, but these 4 records were really important to me, and it was like Miles Smiles, Everybody Digs Bill Evans, and then I'm spacing now.
So let's back up. We've got Miles Smiles, we've got Ron Carter on bass.
Yeah.
We've got Scott LaFaro with...
No, Sam Jones.
Sam Jones. Absolutely. And I always forget that Sam Jones played with Bill Evans.
Yeah.
As did, I think Gary Peacock did a tiny bit as well. Yeah. Sorry, I interrupted you. So we've got those 2 records. Do you remember 3 and 4?
Yeah. Giant Steps.
Oh, the John Coltrane masterpiece.
Paul Chambers.
Yeah.
And then Mingus Art.
Yeah.
So those 4 records were really pivotal for me in the beginning. And ironically, I would say now, still, like those 4 players, if anyone ever asks who your influences, my answer is always, oh, well, everybody, but those 4 people.
Yeah.
Mingus, Ron Carter, Sam Jones, and Paul Chambers.
That's really cool. I mean, it's not easy to select 4 out of the Hall of Giants, but those are 4 incredible players, and it's great to hear Mingus in there as well.
Yeah.
And it's also, I love hearing about his bass playing because he's such a giant of a composer and as a person. Do you feel that you were kind of inspired to push in that direction?
Yeah, I mean, it was his playing that really drew me first. Just so kind of driving and so much personality, in the sound, and just the kind of I was going to say, just
power behind his playing.
Yeah, just kind of bravery in a way to gesture. I mean, his playing, I think, as well as being just brilliant in every way, it's very gestural too. That he kind of, and I think for me that encourages other players to kind of go beyond just.
I think it's interesting to talk about bravery in music and the performance and with the improvised art. Is that what is getting you excited about when you're hearing other players and working with your peers? Maybe you could speak a little bit about bravery. I think that's an interesting concept.
Sure. I mean, for me, personality is kind of everything, because obviously, when we're learning, we're figuring out how all the components work, but ultimately we're trying to say something with the music. We're trying to make art. So, and that's for me is how you use the material, and that could be anything. But just hearing Mingus do something like, it's just, why not?
Yeah. And there's that big bass feature, and it starts in, you're pushing in these textures and these gestures, were you saying?
Yeah.
So we're backing up Guildhall as a really prestigious college within the institution to learn music within the UK. It's really where the top jazz bass players go, really. It's the Guildhall and the Academy. I certainly was at the time that you were studying. So it must have been a real privilege to be around those musicians. And you then got to work in the UK scene. Who were you who were you learning the double bass from at that time? Because you must have had to go for some lessons with people. Who were the teachers or colleagues that were helping you out, friends?
So back then, Guildhall, you had to do classical and jazz. If you were doing a jazz course, they had to be classical.
Wow.
So that was non-negotiable. And when I started Guildhall, I didn't play double bass. I got accepted on my audition on the grounds I would start learning it. So it was a bit of a jumping in at the deep end, to have to start playing upright and classical. So I mean, I was quite reluctant about playing jazz on upright, but very reluctant about classical. But it was the only reason I would be able to stay in London, coming from where I come from, in the North England. So, yeah. So my teacher was a guy called Colin Paris, who was in the LSO. And he was a great teacher, very patient, but also quite, he'd let me know when, I wasn't, doing things well. And jazz was Jeff Klein.
Oh, yeah.
For 2 years, and then Steve Watts.
Yeah, I've had lessons with Steve as well. Yeah, great, another great bass player. Yeah.
So they're all great experiences, and I think they all kind of came about at the right sort of time as well.
Yeah.
Colin was very kind of how to hold the bass and what to do with the left hand. Bow stuff as well, of course, but the bow thing was just too much of a. At the time, it was too much of a. Yeah, it was all too much.
Do you think that? With that your electric experience has given you a slightly different approach with your right hand. I hear a lot of definition in your playing, which I really like with the right hand, and a lot of focus and rhythmical accuracy, and not that these things are exclusive to electric players, but I just wondered if that had maybe fed into the way that you approach. Do you think that you gained from that electric background?
It's possible. I mean, it's hard to say because it's been quite a long journey. I think when I first started trying to play upright, I was trying to play with 2 fingers because I did that on electric, so like this, but I wanted to try and not play with 1 finger. So I tried to find a way to do it that wasn't like this.
Yeah.
Which is kind of the electric way, and it was more like this because when I saw videos or pictures of people like Ron Carter and Paul Chambers, they would be doing that, this kind of thing. So I sort of kind of observed that visually, and I tried to sort of change my technique a bit. So, and then the end effect is like you're using your whole finger and then your whole arm as opposed to just the tip.
So what's your typical kind of walking kind of right hand technique now? If you were, I don't know, walking a blues or something, whatever, what's your default kind of?
So my default now, but this has taken a while, this has taken many years to evolve, but it's like kind of 2 fingers on the string, like kind of this.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Because I want to have as much flesh on the string as possible, and I want as much energy from my back through the arm to kind of eventually get to the string. And so that the end of the finger is just kind of like the contact point or something. But, like that. Whereas when in the beginning, maybe I was kind of going for more of this. Or maybe I tried different things, so maybe this. At times, I can even today find myself like even doing that sometimes.
Yeah.
I think it's fluid, the right hand. You can change depending on what kind of sound you're wanting to get. And even this sometimes, they all sound slightly different, But I think my default would be that. I feel like that I can hit the string a bit softer, but I get a warmer, rounded tone. And so if I'm like kind of, if that's my dynamic level, I want to be kind of around here. So I've got some headroom so that if I hit a bit harder, I can use other techniques like. So on that, I kind of did that, which is a bit different. Yeah, so it's like I say, it's fluid. I don't have one like fixed thing.
And you then spent time in London. What was it that made you make the move to New York? What drew you there, and how did that period of your life fit in? Because I think it's so interesting that you've lived in these 3 powerhouses of music, London, New York and Berlin. So maybe you could speak about the London to Berlin aspect, to New York, and how that worked for you.
Yeah. Well, I think so when I graduated in 2003, I stayed on the London scene for 5 years, and I didn't have too much experience working as a musician yet. So I just spent those years like doing any gig I could do. That would be a restaurant gig, a pub gig, a function gig, sometimes a jazz gig, more like kind of prestigious, or anything. And just I think the move was just because, I was listening to a lot of music that was coming from the States, and I just wanted to be closer to some of that stuff and try and get some experience playing with some different people. And
So how long did it take before you knocked on Mr. Carter's door? Did you did
Still-
you ever do it? Did you ever make the call and try and?
still have never done that.
Yeah, oh, that would have been quite a cool thing. How about, I mean, were you drawn to connect and to meet with any of your heroes? Because obviously, apart from Mr. Carter, there's all of these other wonderful players in New York. I mean, did you get a chance to connect with any of your heroes?
Well, I didn't take any bass lessons in New York.
Right, really? Cool.
Well, I met heroes. I saw a lot of heroes play. I don't know, and then I met new people that I didn't know that were equally inspiring. And just developed some relationships. I mean, it always goes a different way than you think it will. But one thing for sure is that you'll meet a lot of people who are very passionate about what they're doing, and they'll inspire you. It's a very infectious energy.
I was somebody that just came to mind that I was wondering if you'd ever seen, maybe in connected to New York, was Charlie Hayden. We were just talking about him before, and I don't know. I think I can see that you might have enjoyed Charlie Hayden's music and certainly his approach as an artist.
Definitely.
And I don't know. I just wondered, did you ever get a chance to see him perform?
I saw him once in London.
Oh, cool.
Before I moved.
Oh, what gig was that? Do you remember?
It was a Quartet West.
Oh, yes, yeah.
At the Queen Elizabeth Hall.
Oh.
And I was actually playing in this with Gwilym Simcock on the same stage. So we were supporting them.
Oh, what a pleasure.
So I got to see pretty close up from the side. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
And I, spoke to him a little bit in the green room.
Yeah.
He was very polite, but
Oh,
we
wow.
didn't say that much.
Oh, gosh, it's amazing meeting your heroes. And so this time you've got the experience in New York, London. What were the kind of key differences between it? And how did you experience the two? And, I always think of New York as being a very intimidating place in many ways, in the sense that it's just so full on. Like, I don't know, how did you find it? And how was your musical journey at that point?
It's definitely humbling, yeah, because, you can see so much amazing music in many locations every night. And, you just get the feeling like you have to, I don't know if raise your game is the right expression, but, you've got to make sure you're at least kind of at the level, whatever that means,
Yeah.
You can't sort of, I think what I mean is you can't be on autopilot, or you've got to be really, invested in it and really in the moment and trying. I think that's,
When you were playing at that time and in London as well, was memorizing music a big thing in your world? Were you expected to just get up there on the bandstand and know everything? Because I think that's one of the intimidating things about being a bass player in somewhere like New York is that you would just be expected to know. And
I think like in the beginning, so I was lucky in that I sort of didn't go to that many jam sessions, but I knew some people, so I would try and contact people and organize sessions, private, in people's houses or whatever. So I didn't go to too many jam sessions, but on occasions that I did observe that, that like every scene has its kind of tunes that are in vogue. So, you'd see that in Smalls, for example, a lot of people would be playing Stablemates and, Benny Golson tunes and specific kind of, maybe some Joe Henderson tunes. And it's like maybe they wouldn't know other tunes, So it's not about being expected to know or memorize everything. It's just kind of you've got to learn or at least be familiar with kind of what people are doing, So it would help you in that way. Because then if you show up and you don't know it, and everyone else wants to play that song, then you feel like you're letting the side down a bit. So it makes sense to just kind of, I would say, like go to some jam sessions and observe some stuff before you get up and try to be part of it.
yeah.
I think I did that. Yeah.
And what about Berlin? Because we've looked at these other two incredible places, but how's your experience been? What drew you to make that move? Did you come back to the UK and then go to Berlin? How did it work out for you?
Well, my plan was to stay in New York, but I had a lot of problems with my second O1 visa application.
Right,
and,
okay.
I was in limbo for like a year.
Yeah.
But my wife's from Berlin, so we'd met some years before when I was still in London. She was living in Berlin at that point. I didn't really want to go back to London, and I really liked Berlin as a city, and it suited me sort of because I was still kind of on tour in Europe and things. So it suited me travel-wise, and yeah, you know, it's certainly back then. I mean, I'm talking about like 2013. But even now, it's a lot less intense than London, and you don't have to like work every hour God sends, or feel pressure to have to say yes to every gig and then spend all your time in a car. That was my experience of London in the end, and I was starting to get a little tired of that. I just like the relaxed vibe of Berlin, and it suited me. So that was the initial kind of thing. And then when my visa came through, I don't know, I was sort of busy enough in Europe working, and then I was getting a bit bored of this double life thing. I was having to live, you know, being in 2 continents, and I just chose Berlin in the end because it sort of suited me, and the lifestyle I was having at the time was kind of all right. And I was really glad I went to New York and experienced it, but I didn't feel, oh, that's somewhere I have to stay.
Yeah, I can appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I think Berlin gives you this completely different musical community as well, and a lot of the contemporary music that you've been recording, you know, there seems to be a lot of stuff happening in Europe, and you know, and do you feel that you've moved more into that world as your playing has developed?
I'd say it's something I've added to it. So it's my playing hasn't like changed into that, but it's I've just sort of added some of those elements to it, I think.
Because there aren't many people who I think sit really, you know, could like handle the really heavy bebop playing, but then also sit nicely in those other worlds as well of contemporary music. One of the things that's interesting to me is that with your recorded work, and particularly as a leader, you have recorded several albums without a harmony instrument. And one of them, which we'll talk about in a moment, is actually a solo album, which in itself is an incredible achievement. But you've released at least 2 others without piano in the ensemble.
Yeah.
And I just wondered, it was interesting to me that that was the case. Is this a deliberate choice? How did that come about?
I mean, there's a lot of elements. I think the first album I did had piano, and that's the gate. And then I think the reason why I wanted to do a quartet without was because I'd done something with harmony, and I thought, let's try something without. And I wanted the writing on that album, Value, it's called, focuses more on like counterpoint and sort of creating harmony with 3 single line instruments and what can be done with that. I wanted to explore that texture, put it that way. And then there's a standards trio album.
Well, that's the thing. You've got one of them is quite straight ahead in that sense, you know, but again, without piano.
Well, yeah, because I mean, I just feel like, I mean, if Bach can write solo cello suites, that's just one instrument, and if all the harmony you need is implied in a single line, why would you need a harmony instrument? For me, it's just the important thing is in the content itself, you know. So I think standards is a good example where if you have a melody in a bass pitch, you know, I think I'd rather think of what the bass is doing as a counter melody to the melody rather than like chords. I think if you've got those 2 voices, you have everything you need there.
And then what about Walk Alone? Yeah, I mean, recording a solo album is quite a thing for a bass player, and I've even seen some performances that you've done as well on YouTube. There's some live videos of you playing, you know, completely unaccompanied, and it's a big thing. How did it come about? Was it a natural sort of progression, or did you push yourself into that, or how did it work?
I always wanted to do a solo thing. Yeah, the main reason I think was just because I feel like I could learn something from the process.
Yeah,
you know, and so that was and then COVID made it, you know, I just had the time then, so that's, you know, it was recorded in 2021, so still during, you know, heavy lockdown periods, and so I had the time to really work on it, and I prepared a lot at home with my own I have a sort of limited studio setup at home, and I did a lot of preparation with that, just recording things myself, trying things out, a lot of trial and error, just to figure out what works, what doesn't work, you know. So by the time I eventually recorded it, you know, I hired a mobile engineer and I had a clear plan of what I wanted to do. So, you know.
So it's not stuff that you've recorded in batches at home. It's stuff that you prepared for, like fantastic.
Yeah, so it was a performance. You know.
And the what about in terms of equipment and stuff? Were you particularly concerned about, recording a solo bass album? It's, like the recorded sound is never more important really if it's the only instrument. Did you just leave it in the hands of the engineer, or is that something you have a view about yourself?
I have a view about it myself, but also the engineer and I just spoke a lot about it, and he's someone I know really well, and it's like I've known him for 20 years, and he's also a musician, so. We have similar taste in like sonic things, and we have a similar taste in how we like bass to sound. So he was able to shed some light on how to achieve those things. And then when I was talking about what other kind of sounds I would like to get, so for example, we had 2 mics close to the bass, not dissimilar to that, and then sort of a high one for like kind of more finger sounds. And then we had like some mics in the back of the room for ambient sound. So when it came to mixing, we did a lot of, experimenting with delay and, other things on the ambient mics. But we kept the main mic kind of pretty pure.
It's got a really rich sound to it. It's really impressive. And what kind of bass were you using and strings in that context? What was this? Because this is my instrument that you're using today. Yeah. So what did you take into the studio then?
So at the time I had 2 basses. Most of it was on my old German bass, not really that different from this, to be honest. And so late 19th, early 20th century, sort of Gamba. Probably Mark Neukirchen. I don't know much about it, but it has a good sound and it's punchy and it has a sort of mid-range clarity that I like, that I look for. And the strings were, I think at that time, I had a Gerald Gensler.
Oh, wow.
G and D string, and I had some steel E and A, maybe a Spyrocore E and A. But now I use all Gensler. But I do experiment a bit, but I've settled on the complete Gensler set for a while.
Is that it for you now?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I've been using them on and off for about 15 years.
Oh, right. Oh, okay.
I've gone through periods of going back to steel, and then hybrid setups. No, I like the Genslers a lot, and he's developed a lot of the strings and the models since then too. I mean, he's always developing stuff.
So which is the one that you go for? Is it a wrapped gut string?
No. So for a long time I used a model called the AP, which means all-purpose.
Okay.
Which is silk core and some kind of synthetic. I'm not sure what the winding is, but they're great. But actually had a new neck graft on my bass, and I noticed that the tension was different after that, and I found the APs to be a little too low tension. So he has another model called the Helix that I really like, little higher tension, a little brighter sounding, and that suits my bass because it's quite dark.
And so before we wrap things up, Phil, one of the things I was hoping that we could talk about today is that you shared a couple of YouTube videos that really got a lot of attention a couple of years back now. And the 2 topics were so cool. Your playing was so cool. I just wondered if we could maybe speak a little bit about that. And the first one, which was the first one? Was it the Cherokee one that you... Yeah. So tell us about that video and what makes it... Yeah, what you were exploring and what you were demonstrating, because it's a topic that is very requested by bass players, or bass players are very interested in.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was lockdown boredom, That's what started me doing a lot of those videos.
Yeah.
But practicing all kinds of tempos, I got really into when I was studying at Guildhall, and a lot of playing along with recordings. And I noticed that some recordings I'd tried to play along with, my wrist would seize up when trying to play along with it. So I tried to find the way where the problem was, kind of thing. So I'd then do it with a metronome and find the tempo where I sort of, where the cutoff point was. And then I'd find ways to relax that. So let's say, maybe I was okay until about 300, for example.
Yeah.
So
this is all about playing fast and increasing the tempo. Yeah. So you get to about 300 BPM.
Yeah, so what I mean, I've actually done a video about this exact subject.
Yeah.
So what tends to happen, I think, is bass players start tightening up and they stop breathing.
Okay.
And so, I think a really important thing about playing fast is breathing and hearing the tempo, like those 2 things. Because a lot of people just think if they move their fingers fast enough, it's just going to somehow work out. But you actually have to hear the tempo.
So what do you mean? So you really mean like with you're away from the bass, you can really clearly hear what you're aiming to do at those higher tempos?
Yeah. So like I put the metronome on 2 and 4 at 400, so that would be 200. But I think some people might put the metronome on 1 and 3, which wouldn't, you'd be playing at that speed technically, but in a practical situation, let's say you're playing with a band at that speed and the drummer's playing with a hi-hat on 2 and 4, you might sort of not be hearing the tempo properly or hearing the whole thing properly. So you've got to find a way to practice that. So I found that doing it with 2 and the 4 was better.
So even at these really high tempos, you're practicing with the metronome beat 2 and 4, because I find I reach a point where in the higher tempos that for me, like 1 and 3, or even just 1, or like but it tends to move. But I mean, it's interesting. So you think it's worth persevering and keeping going with that 2 and 4 up to the extremes?
Definitely.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, because you could just feel that 2 and 4 as an offbeat as well. Yeah, actually, I could demonstrate.
Yeah, please. So, yeah.
So
here we go. Shall I hold your metronome for you once you get it going?
I can. So that's 200.
Okay.
So if I was to feel 400 at 2 and 4, be like 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3. So obviously that's very fast. So what I would do is, like I said, find where my limit is, and then go down a bit. So let's say it's 300.
Yeah.
Which would be 150.
Okay.
So 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4, and then maybe you could hold it.
Shall I hold it?
So I'll just do it on a blues in F too. Well, so what I'm doing in that process is it's a bit like meditating. I'm sort of figuring out how my body feels. Where's the tension in my body? So I want to get to a really relaxed state and then just try and just breathe through that. And you've got to do it for a long period of time. You've got to kind of allow that. You've got to sort of go through the pain, in a way.
And is the breath a sort of natural and happening in a natural way, or is it linked in with the music? Because a lot of people, when they connect to the breath with the music that they're playing and like breathing in on upbeats and things like this.
Yeah, I'd say that's...
Or you're trying to go more of a relaxed sort of just trying to breathe and let the air come and go. And
yeah, but I think in the beginning you have to kind of exaggerate.
Yeah.
You've got to kind of overtly... I'll show you what I mean again. So I put it back to 400 there. Sorry, so that's kind of I haven't touched the bass for 5 days.
Wow, that's incredible. And also it's my bass as well, so it's like you're using a different instrument.
But sort of what I'm trying to do there is just kind of really deep breaths,
Yeah.
So one good way to try hearing the tempo is to play in 2.
Yeah.
So like that. So if you can play in 2, that means you're hearing the tempo. So then you can give your hand a break if now and again you want to just kind of...
Could you just do that for us one more time, but slower?
Sure.
Because this is what I can imagine people at home and me when I'm watching this back are going to be thinking.
So this is the 300 now.
Okay.
So that's 2 and 4. And playing in 2 at that speed would be... So you can play really simple, but have this on.
Yeah.
But that means you're hearing that.
Yeah.
So just because you're playing a fast tempo doesn't mean you have to kill yourself. You know,
So
here the ear is a really it's a crucial factor to being able to play that speed.
And that ties us really nicely into one of the other videos that you shared of you playing this absolutely crazy piano part on the bass, this piano solo. Was it Line Up, yeah. And I just wondered if I will link to these videos so people can check them out. And you playing this very impressive transcription. I just wondered if you could speak a little bit about how people should approach, or how you think people should approach transcription, or how you do. You know, it was interesting that you were playing really the right hand of a piano line. I mean, it's incredibly complex. Is it Lenny Tristano?
Lenny Tristano.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
That's you could have gone a little easier. But like, yeah, what are your thoughts on transcription in that process?
Well, I mean, I'd known that solo for 20 years or so and always loved it, and kind of, I think the first time I ever heard it, I was like, I would love to be able to play something like that. And the thing I loved about it was just the absolute sort of manipulation of the elements in a way. So manipulation of time and melody and voice leading and all that kind of thing. And for me, it's like, I don't know if it was an improvised solo actually, but it doesn't matter. To me, in my perception, it was. And I think I just looked at it like a study piece, you know, just some of those, the way he manipulates all those elements. I wanted to just understand them more. So that's the reason why I you know, learnt it.
So does transcription look like a process? How does the process look like for you? Are you transcribing at the bass? Are you transcribing at the piano? How does it work? Or
no, not really at the bass. Any instrument. It's just essentially you're transcribing it by ear. But when you have an instrument there, you can just figure out the notes.
Yeah.
You know, because I did it very slowly. And then I kind of figured out the notes before trying to learn how to play it, you know. And, you know, this solo it exists online. If you want the notation, it's there somewhere.
Yeah,
and I probably did steal bits of it.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, the most important part was learning the content and then trying to transfer it to the bass and what that would mean and getting over some of those challenges.
Well, those are big technical challenges, yeah.
Yeah, which is they're all possible, you know.
And there's a lot of moving around a lot of large interval jumps, you know, particularly with these kind of piano lines. You can be, covering a lot of ground quite quickly, which for the bass is...
Yeah, I had to swap some octaves around to make it playable.
That's interesting.
On the instrument. But for the most part, I tried to just stay within, you know, one range. But the biggest challenge is articulation, you know, how to articulate some of these things. And I just, you know, this is nothing new, but it's like if you've got a stream of eighth notes, or like two adjacent eighth notes, you can either pick each one. Right, let's choose two pitches. If I go like B flat and C, you can either go, or you could hammer on, or you could slide, and then the other one would be the pull off. So that there's 4 ways to articulate 2 notes in succession. So it's all a combination of that. So I think, so that line I'm kind of articulating.
Such a cool line.
I'm articulating every note, I think. But then it's like, so I'm going, playing the note, then I'm pulling off.
Yeah. And then also sliding back down to
Yeah, so that's a slide and a pull off.
Yeah.
I forgot the rest, but you know, you get the idea. So it's full of that kind of thing.
Oof.
That.
Yeah.
So it's figuring out what you're picking, what you're not picking.
Yeah.
And I wrote the articulation and fingering and shifting above every single note. So I think it's 6 choruses. So for me, I had to do that in order to just, otherwise you're gonna be playing and then you're sort of playing yourself into a corner that you can't get out of.
Yeah.
So you have to sort of know the fingering. But that's purely a technical exercise. But then it has sort of, I don't know if it's transmitted into my actual playing. It may have done, you know, but it's more like just a kind of something to do, like research, really.
Cool. Phil, what's next for you? What's we're coming up to the end of 2023 at the recording of this interview. What does 2024 look like for you? Have you got any projects you want to share with us that you're working on? Any new records? Obviously, we need to. That's the other thing. We need to encourage people to go and check out your recorded work, because Walk Alone has, although it was recorded in 2021, has only just been released in 2023.
Yeah.
That's a really fantastic solo record. But you've also reissued. Or issued for the first time, 3 other recordings that you recorded previously. Maybe just tell us a little bit about your recorded work and where people can connect with your music.
I mean, all my stuff's available like on all the streaming platforms, Spotify, Apple Music, but it's all on my Bandcamp page. It's all in one place, and that would be where I recommend people go, because then I can make a little bit of money if they were to buy it. You can also stream it there. But so that's all Bandcamp.
Bandcamp. And what about projects for yourself going forward? Have you got any other, things lined up in the pipeline you can share, or is it?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm working on a thing at the moment, a new, actually a larger ensemble thing, because I've only really recorded trios, quartets, solo. So this thing would be like 8, not really an octet, but like there's going to be 8 people I have in mind.
Yes.
I don't know if they're all going to be playing at the same time, but it's a lot of, the writing is very, it's like melody and bass only. So, but there's 2 pianos and a vibraphonist and 2 horns, bass drums. And really the idea is that there's going to be a lot of freedom in the music, and the information is in the linear thing. There's a lot of harmony in there and a lot of rhythmic counterpoint in there too. But I'm trying not to overwrite things, and I'm trying to see what they come up with, so that there's enough information there, sort of within the melodic and rhythmic content. See what happens there. I'm really excited about that.
Sounds like a heavy project, and we will be looking forward to finding more about that. Where can people find you online? Where's the best way? So you've got Bandcamp for your music, your website?
I have a website which I don't update often enough.
I'll link anyway.
But it exists.
Yeah.
Facebook, Instagram.
Sure. Well, we'll provide links for everything below. And I believe you're going to play a short piece for us very kindly on my bass, which I know is always a challenge playing someone else's instrument. In fact, maybe just before we wrap, how do you find playing different basses when you're on tour and in situations like this? I mean, you come in and you sound so comfortable, but I always find that impressive when I see people,
Well, I mean, every bass is different. I mean, I even though this is a lovely instrument and it's set up really well, it's still a bit different to me, mine. So I do have to kind of find some of the notes that might not be where I think they might be. But yeah, it's quite a nice bass. It's easy to find things, but some basses are not. They're really hard work. I don't know. It's just a practical reality you have to deal with every day. I think I keep an open mind, so I definitely don't ever expect to be able to play all my stuff, or whatever that means, on any instrument. I actually look at it as a nice challenge. So not to sound too corny, but it would be nice if the instrument was going to teach me something, because it might unlock something different. So
it's an opportunity, isn't it, to approach it in a different way? You play differently on different basses.
Exactly.
It's a very cool thing.
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of my concept, we didn't really get much into this, but like about improvising generally, it's kind of like I try not to rely on devices. So as such, I rely on like my ear and sort of hopefully a good understanding of the elements that make up music. Harmony, melody, rhythm, obviously, but like pitch, voice leading, space, dynamics. So they're the tools I try to work with, and then I try to just see what's coming up.
So you're not playing as many kind of pre-composed licks that you're inputting into.
I try not to.
Here's a 2-5-1. Here's another one.
I try to get away from that.
Yeah.
Because
interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I think I can definitely hear that in your playing. You certainly have a real freedom and, like we were discussing earlier, I think a bravery about your playing. I love the way that you go for it, that you stretch out and that you express yourself. So thanks so much for coming and joining us today and sharing your music. We really appreciate it. And if you're watching at home, you want to learn more about Phil, please go and check out all of the links below. But stay tuned, we're going to have a short performance from Phil Donkin. So thanks, Phil. Thanks for joining us.
Pleasure.